Hi and welcome back to Economics A-Level here on YouTube. This video is going to look at the first part of disequilibrium in markets, which is looking at excess supply. If you want a refresher on equilibrium price and equilibrium in markets, click on the link in the top right hand corner now. So equilibrium then is where demand meets supply, so where we've fulfilled all of the demand with the available supply. And as you can see on the graph, this occurs at price P and quantity Q, which we're going to call the equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. It stands to reason, therefore, that disequilibrium will occur when demand does not equal supply, when there is a mismatch between the two. And if we're thinking specifically of excess supply, we're going to say that this occurs at a price where there is more supply than demand at that price. So this is also known as a surplus. And if we look at the graph, we can see that if we pick price P1, there's going to be quantity Q2 supplied at that price because of the profit incentive. That's higher than the original equilibrium price, so therefore more suppliers are going to be willing to supply at that price. The demand at that price, though, is only Q1. And the reason for that is because now the higher prices mean that fewer consumers can afford to buy that good, their incomes won't go as far to buy that good, some consumers will have to stop buying that good at that higher price. And as a result, if that was the price in this market, there would be a mismatch between demand and supply at that price. There would be Q1 demand, Q2 supply, and that difference is what excess supply is. So the same principle of excess supply can be applied to labour markets, which it frequently is in economics exams at A-level. As you can see on the graph, it looks very similar to the one that we've just looked at, but this time the price axis says wage rate and the quantity axis is referring to the quantity of labour. And we can see that if a national minimum wage, for example, if that was above the equilibrium, then we'll have an excess supply of labour. There'd be Q2 labour supplied because a higher wage incentivises workers to want to work because they gain more income from that work. But it means that only Q1 labour is demanded because this will push up firms' costs of production and therefore reduce the demand for labour at that wage rate. So we refer to the excess supply here, the difference between Q1 and Q2, as unemployment, and that's how we refer to excess supply in labour markets. Very briefly, we need to look at a couple of the causes of excess supply. This will be done in a later video in a bit more detail, but firstly, we want to talk about the Common Agricultural Policy. By subsidising farmers, guaranteeing them minimum price for their product, caused a great amount of oversupply or excess supply of crops during the time of the Common Agricultural Policy's implementation. So that's a good example to talk about when you're talking about excess supply. You may have heard of examples like the sugar mountains and milk lakes and so on in relation to the oversupply of products under the Common Agricultural Policy, and that's a great thing to bring into essays to show that your application and your wider understanding of the context of economics. So to get back to equilibrium, if there is an excess supply of a product, the market has to react and reduce supply and increase the level of demand. So what has to happen if there is an excess supply of products is that the excess stocks have to be sold at a lower price. Suppliers have to be willing to get rid of these stocks at the lower price in order for the market to return to equilibrium. And the question that will be posed is, why would suppliers be willing to sell this product at a lower price? And the simple solution to that question is that if they hang on to the stock and the demand isn't there for the stock at that price because the price is too high, then they would make a pure loss on that stock because it would remain unsold. And from a firm or business's perspective, making a pure loss would be an unacceptable outcome. So they would try to clear the excess stock they have, as seen on the diagram there, by lowering the price to incentivize more consumers to buy that product. And you can see that there will be a contraction of supply and an expansion of demand as we move back towards an equilibrium market clearing price where the price of the good is lower, so fewer suppliers will be willing to supply that lower price after the clearance of the stock, and more consumers will be willing to purchase at that lower price because that price would fall within a greater number of consumers' incomes. So in the next video, we'll continue to look at disequilibrium in markets, but this time we'll look at the problem of excess demand and how the free market solves that problem. So if you want to go to that video, click the link in the top right hand corner now. Please click subscribe and like if you want to see more of these videos. Post in the comments about what videos you want me to make next for you, which will help you the most, and see you next time.